So, okay, so we're starting now, and just introduce yourself, and then people will know where you are, what you've been through, where you are at the moment, and we'll know why we're talking about this, really.
Okay, let's see. I'm Wendi Saggese, and I just started my company called Wake Up Your Wisdom. And I am living with cancer. I was diagnosed in 2010.
Mm-hmm.
And my experience of cancer has changed enormously since I learned about something called the three principles.
Okay.
Not my experience of the actual cancer, the physical part of it, but the emotional part of it has changed enormously.
Okay.
So that's what prompted me to start a business, Wake Up Your Wisdom. And I've been looking into psychology and different things for all my life, but I worked for Byron Katie. I worked for Tony Robbins. I did. I did numerous things, and nothing quite made me understand the way life works the way that the principles does.
Yes, because it's the three principles are based on the same understanding, I think, that Byron Katie has, but she doesn't explain it in the same way, I think. Would you say? Yeah, I think her questions I think, are based on the same understanding of where we come from, who we are, that we're more than our body.
Yeah.
That other people's that we have our own individual experience of reality, that each of us has our reality through our own thoughts. She just approaches it in a different way, I think.
My computer's not declining this. Why is that happening? It's just going to go until it's supposed to listen to me when I say decline, computer. Just one more minute. There we go. There's peace. See, that's almost an example of what happens in your head. You get a storm of thought. And the thing that happens is you try to fix that thought. And if you just wait, it's going to pass on its own. Now, of course, if I was a little bit more computer intelligent, I would have fixed that particular noise. Well, however, can you talk again?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. So, yes, there's a lot of similarities in everything I've done. And the three principles, there's something very different about it, in that you can actually put the stuff that Byron Katie has done into the three principles, but the three principles is broad.
Yeah.
And it's not about changing or manipulating your thinking.
No.
Because the thing is, thought isn't real to begin with. Mm-hmm. And with some of the other things that I've done in the past, they're beautiful as well. And you sometimes get that expanded feeling when you stop thinking those thoughts. Mm-hmm. So they're beautiful and they have their place and they're wonderful, but there's something in some other things where you almost have to always go somewhere to get it. You have to go do the work, you have to go meditate, and then you could feel peaceful. You have to do something. And with the three principles, it's just this framework for understanding that underneath all that thought, that was there, that beautiful feeling that I keep using my hands and I'm like, do you see my hands? I don't know. It doesn't matter. Do you see my hands?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm a Jewish New Yorker. We talk with our hands.
I tend to do that too.
And I have my cast off, so I can move my hands a little. Yeah, it's getting there. So, like, when I did the other things, I was waiting for some sort of enlightenment to happen. It was my experience. So I do a technique, and then I get this beautiful feeling around something that I had previously been upset about.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would say, oh no, I have to go do that with the next thing. Mm-hmm. And then I have to go do that with the next thing. You know, when I lived at Byron Katie's, I could have walked around with, like, we had papers, because she does this thing called the work that you write out your work. You're familiar with it? Mm-hmm. And I still, somewhere in my junk, have the book of the work. And I was waiting to get through every single issue I ever had so I could get enlightened.
Yeah.
So while I think the message is pure, you don't really need a technique to get there. And you're there. You're even there when you feel like shit. You're always there.
Absolutely.
So this understanding just changed me, because for me, with those other understandings, I didn't think that feeling bad was, I didn't think I should feel bad. I just always wanted to fix the bad. Mm-hmm. And with this, I understand that something different, that there's not really anything to fix. Yeah. Those are just weather. That's just that bad, good. If you're feeling good, it's a thought. If you're feeling bad, it's a thought. It's all just thought, and it's not real. Mm-hmm. So that's how I experience it. But all that aside, I don't know whether that's understandable or helpful or not.
I think it is. And I think what I find most helpful in the understanding of it is the basic, the reason we're okay, like that it's okay for feelings to be, you know, to have uncomfortable feelings and not to have to do anything about them, is that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, and that's part of the human experience. You know, it's just, we are, and the thoughts are just passing through, and if we let them, they just pass through. But it's the basic understanding that we are part of the whole spiritual essence of the universe, you know, that we are spiritual beings, and that there isn't anything to fix, that we are just perfect to start with, and that everything that we're experiencing is what we're supposed to be experiencing at this moment, and then that can change. And if you just don't fight it, it does, like you said, like if you didn't fight the computer, it stops. The ringing stops, and whereas when you were busy, you know, like, what shall I do with it? What shall I do with it? You just get more and more uncomfortable, and more into your thoughts. And like you said, yeah. So it's.
Now, that experience that you're talking about, how we're all part of this whole, and it really is the way life is, I find that to be true. However, when I'm feeling bad and I'm wound up in my thoughts, I don't think that's true.
You don't think that's true?
When I'm wound up in my thinking, yeah. I don't think that's true.
Hang on one second. When you say I don't think that's true, who's the I?
I am the example of the whole. That's the way I look at it. But it's everybody. It's me. I'm talking about me particularly because maybe that's not your experience. So I don't want to say that.
No, I didn't mean it quite in that way. What I meant was, which I is it? Is it your ego I or your spiritual I? Is it the I that, see, because we experience life as we are the spiritual being, and then we have a a human experience. So, and our human experience, we have an ego. And we quite often say, I this and I that, meaning I this body and I this mind, rather than I the spiritual self. You see what I mean?
Yeah. I have heard that before, and I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. So
when I say I just mean I don't really have that distinction, because I don't know if I believe in that ego thing. I just think that I really see it as the principles.
Yes,
there's mind, consciousness, and thought.
So what I mean by the ego is the thinking, is the busy thinking.
Right. Okay. Great. See, that just simplifies it for me, yeah. Because when I am in my thinking, I cannot see that I'm part of a whole.
Yeah. But the part of you that is part of the whole can, even though you can't, because your busy thinking is in the way. So if you...
Right, but to me, on this earth, with my feet in the ground, that just complicates it personally, because there is that part of me. We know, I agree, you agree, there's that part where you're part of a whole, where life is, you feel very connected. But when you can't see it, what's the difference? Like, that's what I'm saying. When you're busy and you're thinking.
Yeah, the difference to me is that the spiritual you is still watching you doing that. It's still watching the mind doing all the thinking. It has to be, because it's still the spiritual you.
So, okay, so what does that mean to you?
That means
the fact that the spiritual you is still watching. What do you mean? What does that mean to you?
Well, it's because when you say, there's a difference between when you say, it's a difference for me when I say I'm doing this and I'm doing that, and when I remember, and as you say, when my mind is busy with thought, but when I remind myself that actually that's not who I am, my body is not who I am, my thinking is not who I am, I'm much more than that, and that spiritual part of me is always calm, is always watching, is just can't, it's not the thinking, so it's always there watching the thinking, and it just is when I remind myself. So what I do quite often when I had an insight once that when I was really stuck in my thinking, my mother had cancer, and she had got a lot better with some alternative treatment we had used, and with some energy healing that I was doing, and all her tumors had gone away, and then they started coming back again, and I was feeling very responsible for her health and her. This is before I knew about the three principles, right? But I was feeling very responsible, but I still knew that my getting uncomfortable about it and feeling responsible and was not going to help her. So I was busy in my thinking, what else can I do? What else can I do to make her better? What else can I do to help her to be better and to recover, and so on? And should I be doing anything more, or is this her journey? And should I just be, helping her to allow her to go whichever way she wants to go? And I just got very busy in my thinking, and then I realized I need to ask for help. So I sat down, asked for guidance, asked, how can I find myself knowing what the best way is for this, and then just did some meditation, just got out of the way, did some meditation. And what came to me was to, in my head, to repeat 3 phrases, which were, don't let this go, don't let it fade, just trust just trust. And the just trust bit was the just trust in the universe, and just trust that you are bigger than this, and that this is just thought, and you don't have to do anything. So it was just telling me I didn't have to let go of these, I didn't have to let go of the things. I could just not do anything. Okay. So that's what I did. And then I was back understanding that it wasn't my responsibility, and it wasn't, I could just allow whatever is happening to happen, and just take it one step at a time, and just see what comes to me, what inspiration comes to me, what inspiration comes to my mother, and so on. So I was in a much better space then to be able to help her, basically. So that's what I mean by, and so quite often I just say to myself, if I get into a bad state like that, if I'm busy in my thinking, I quite often just say to myself, just trust. And it reminds me of who I really am, that I'm not this thought, because that's basically why it helps me.
Right. Yeah. That you're not the thought.
No.
And what I find really interesting about the 3 principles is the way that what happens is you could wind up in that thinking and be wound up in the I have to help my mother, I have to help my mother, and you could just do absolutely nothing. You don't even have to get to the point where you say, I just should trust myself. That universal mind that you're talking about, it's there underneath the thinking. So it was always there to begin with. And your thinking, just when you leave it alone and you don't try to fix it, which is what it sounds like you did, it settles down, and this miracle happens where you see some new thought. But that miracle that I'm talking about that happens was always there under that thinking. Exactly. And so that's more the way that I see it. It's sort of simple. It's like the thought and the universal mind that's just there. Of course, the thought it's all part, the universal mind, the thought is all part of the universal mind and everything. But
so in what ways has it actually helped you, do you think, understanding that? How has it helped you to how has it helped you with the emotions and so on about the cancer?
It's just helped in so many ways. I have to think about which one's coming to mind right now. I guess the most concrete thing to start with is that I don't have to fix my thinking about it. So in some of my blogs, I wrote how I went down, after a diagnosis, and got, what I mean by going down is just got really upset. And that was okay. There was kind of like Michael Neal talks about a safety net. It's like that you're going down because you're thinking. And there's a safety net of this universal energy, of this universal mind that's always there under all that thinking. So there's space to go down. And when there's space to go down and be upset, then this miracle happens where you pop back up without fixing it.